thanks everyone for dialing in this morning. Um, and Bob, if you're here for the first time, I'm just telling you that we all like to turn on our cameras because this is mostly an audience participation show. So no sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, but turn the camera on, lean forward, and participate in the show. And despite this, just to be sure that we have people who want to say something, and that it's not just Dominik and myself retelling news out of the AEM universe. I've invited Andreas and Martin, and let me start with Andreas. Andreas was one of the first people outside Adobe who was confronted with the crazy idea that was Helix, then turned into Franklin, then turned into a lot of other names, and um, and since then, Andreas has turned from a basically everyone who starts working with this starts as a skeptic, myself included. So Andreas turned from a skeptic to one of the biggest promoters of edge delivery services and Adobe Experience Manager sites as a cloud service with document-based editing. And and Andreas, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your journey with this product?
Thank you. Thanks for having me, first of all. So, very excited to be in this round. Yeah, as you said, started as a skeptic. I hope I still am because you need to keep the spirit, right?
Yep.
Like to always question stuff. But you're right that I grew to like the new platform, the new possibilities, the new approaches. And yeah, as many of us, I'm coming from classic AM, how I like to call it now. Classic AM Java development, backend stuff, right? Like doing architecture there for 10 years or so and development. And yeah, a year ago, Piotr and David Michele and you, Lars, said, why not migrating Netcentric.biz, right? As a first hands-on experience. Even before that, I started a little bit to play around myself. Back then I was a little bit afraid of touching CSS. That changed in the meantime. But yeah, I enjoyed the journey the last year and really happy to see it grow now and getting more and more people on board it and other opinions and so on.
Yeah,
Really cool to see.
excellent. Great to have you on board. And our second guest today is Martin Buergi, and Martin is a product manager um, at Adobe, working on AEM, and he was one of the product managers caring about our product when nobody else was caring about it, right? When everyone was thinking, oh, well, this is just a science project that a bunch of crazy people are working on. So I'm really glad to have Martin here. And the, the reason why I invited both of you is that I want to talk about um, one important question, right? Which is, how do I explain this to my customer? How do I explain this to a prospect? How do I get people to try it? And Martin has extensive experience in this, because I think, Martin, how many customer facing pitches have you participated in? Is it triple digits
Um,
already?
yeah. I mean, I do at least, don't want to brag, I'm Swiss, so let's be very conservative, maybe 4 or 5 per week. So it sums up. I'm started doing my first pitches uh, last July. I mean, over a year ago.
Yeah,
So I would say a lot.
yeah,
And basically, I'm not pitching regular AM anymore. So Andreas, I'm not saying AM Classic because it's all AM, right? I think I'm pitching more the outcome-based version of AM with edge delivery. So that's what I'm doing since 15 to 20 months. So I would say many pitches by then.
Yeah, excellent. And Martin, for those that don't know you, can you give a quick introduction of yourself and who you are?
Well, I see many faces I've met before. It's great to see you guys here. I joined Adobe over 11 years ago, and I was happy back then to took over SIF, the Commerce Integration Framework. Some people loved it, some hated it, but I have to tell you, it's now the most used add-on. So if you don't know it, it's the integration. It productized the integration with the commerce engine out there. And so I was the PM for that. But as Lars said, I was looking very closely at Helix or Franklin back then because I've seen the challenges that our customer had implementing AM and specifically with commerce. So it was very interesting to see if that new technology will solve some of the challenges. And so I shifted my focus from SIF more towards edge delivery service. If you I cannot really describe what my responsibilities are. I would say I take ownership still of commerce because commerce is my baby, and with edge delivery service, there's a lot of value in it with commerce. I also look into what is known as Project Crosswalk. That's the combination of AM authoring with edge delivery. And I also do a lot around edge delivery in general. So it's usually I'm the to go PM if the sorry. So if there's anything I need to answer from a PM point of view.
Yeah, thanks, Martin.
And that's what here, by the way, if I drink that, I just survived the cold, so I need to warm my throat here and there.
Okay, and for those of you that are wondering and that are observing closely why Martin's lips are moving, and the green frame appears around Dominik's screen, um, the reason is that Martin and Dominik are in the same room. You can't see it, but maybe one of you can move the laptop camera just to. Oh yeah, here. There's the proof. Yeah. So and I think Martin, that makes you our first official studio guest. So
Thank you.
yeah. So the Martin, why don't we start with the last pitch you gave? Yeah, you said you're giving 3 to 4 a week. So what was the last one you gave? And you don't have to disclose the prospect, obviously, but just give us a picture of how this works for you.
Okay, I'll do that. First of all, let me say there's not a holy grail and a generic pitch that works for everyone. So the last customer I met was an existing AIM customer for years. It's a car manufacturer, so that you understand a little bit the industry. And they have a heavy customized AM environment, as most of us have. They're on-prem. They're discussing now the move to the cloud. They understand the value prop with AIM as a cloud service, but as many customers, they're a bit afraid of the effort migrating backend and front end to the cloud. And they've obviously heard about the pitch here of edge delivery service, so they wanted to discuss what we would recommend to them. And so that already set the stage kind of a bit on what kind of parts we want to pitch of edge delivery service. And we talked mainly to IT. So for us, it was pretty clear that we focus on the simplicity of moving the head to edge delivery service, as it will save them a lot of time. But we also tried talking to the business value of it. But if you think about a car manufacturer, it all matters about fast experiences. But if you look at the page, it's not your typical content page. If you want to buy a car, you have car configurators on it and all these interactive, I call them, let's say, small business application. So there was a lot of this discussion around, okay, it should become simple and faster, but how does it still work with my existing investment in these business applications? So in a way, it helps you getting there. You will save time. And we also had to address then the question around AM authoring because authors were pretty happy. So they were like, well, our first challenge we need to solve is really going towards the cloud. How do we change the head that we save most of our, or that we can be as efficient as possible? And once we're there, we can still look at the authoring side if there's anything we can improve. And
Right.
so that was kind of a dynamic pitch where we first had to learn what exactly you want to try to achieve, where are your biggest pain points. And so basically what I said, that's how we pitched it. And we agreed now that this is really the sequence we want to go with them. Let's take a couple of their first pages because they said we tried so hard to get to a Lighthouse score 100. Seeing is believing. And so that has led to kind of a VIP project where we tell them, well, will show you. So we move a couple of pages on Edge service as a proof point to get to that super fast Lighthouse score. We keep authoring where it is,
Right.
and they were pretty quickly convinced.
Okay. Very cool.
And maybe a question from my side, because you said you're pitching after 20 years. What has changed from this pitch you described, maybe from the first ones you gave, like felt like 100 years ago?
Yeah, they were so bad. I mean, you will have to learn. I think you learn pretty quickly that you should not sell features to customer. I mean, I'm not telling you, you guys are anyway a lot of way smarter than I am. It's not about selling features to customers, it's selling about value, trying to solve their challenges. And so what I've learned is, first of all, accept the fact that the customer is opinionated. Don't convince him at any chance that what you show them is much better. You have to take them on a journey. So I think that's my lessons learned is we show them what is our vision. We show real world examples. So I put so much more emphasis on showing what has worked with other customers, why it has worked, and really trying to take them on the journey to this new world versus I just go through a pitch and tell them how great we are.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Martin. Andreas, what about you? What was the last time you tried to get somebody on board with AEM?
So, like, first of all, I'm not doing that many, right? Like, I'm not doing 4 or 5 per week. There was a time I did 4 or 5 per month. That was already quite something. I thought so. I did maybe overall like 20, 30 introductions over this last year. Funny enough, the last one was also a car manufacturer, so seemed to be many cars built lately, right? So my approach was always to very quickly show them what we are actually talking about, right? You have to set a little bit of context, what we are talking about, where we are coming from, right? How that fits in this whole overall picture they already have about Adobe and AEM and so on, right? But really showing them how it looks like in a real world scenario, right? And there you can go with just like a standard setup or like with any of the sites we have, right? Like just showing them this is the authoring, this is the development. Depending how much time we have, I even showed them the development stuff and also depending on the audience. And yeah, as you said at the beginning, we all started as skeptics, right? And the two things always coming is like, how can it work? The author can break so much. And the second thing is, where's my server-side rendering, right? Like those are I mean, there are many detailed questions for sure, right? But so in general, you can always say those are the two main areas the questions come about and you need to answer, right?
Right. So one thing both of you mentioned is that it's really important to adjust to the audience, right? And we used to have one slide calling out the 4 different groups of stakeholders that are required to make a web experience success, right? We have the business sponsor or the business owner who's basically looking at the numbers and doesn't care that much about the website, but cares about the revenue or the new customers it's bringing, right? We have, on the other hand, the authors, and the authors, in the end, they don't care that much about the money, but they care about how hard or how easy is it to write something, how hard is it to get my work done, and we then have the IT team, right, which is in the traditional world used to run the servers, and now they're just running the CDN and operating the CDN. And finally, we have the developers, right? And in the end, you need all four groups to come together to create something. And in my experience, I always found that the things that, or the pitches that went best for me were the ones where I had everyone in the room, right? Where all four groups were there, because there's certain parts to this, right? Like document-based editing. If you show this to somebody who is not authoring, right, and who has never gone through the effort of learning a new content management system, learning how to operate complex components that have been built for them, then you cannot really understand the relevation of how much easier this is, right? And on the other hand, if you don't have the business person in there, then everything you're telling about, hey, this is outcome based, this is going to make your site faster, this is going to create more conversions, this is going to reduce your bounce rate, then all of these things are just going to sound, yeah, a lot of interesting things are going to happen that are solving none of my problems. So having all four groups in there was something that I found super essential. How are you approaching this, Andreas?
Yeah, what you're saying is quite interesting, because actually thinking about it, the guys bringing up, hey, the authors can break so much. That's not the authors themselves, right?
Right.
Like it's the probably the IT
Right.
guys, right?
Yep.
Saying, okay, the authors. If there's an author in the call, they probably tell them, you know what, we already know how to break your current system, right? We have this power anyway.
Right.
And they just have to trust also each other, right?
Right.
But if you have like all in the call, you get all the views, and sometimes they're answering their questions like within themselves, right? You
Right.
just need to moderate.
Yeah.
So then the question is not like what can the author break now, or what can the author do wrong in this new environment, but more how does this new environment help
Right.
the authoring, right?
Yeah.
Because you will always have advantages and disadvantages about
Right.
every platform,
Yeah.
right? But like you always need to focus on both sides. And how it is, maybe it is human nature, or I don't know, like at the beginning with something new, you're always skeptic, right? And you
Right.
tend to overemphasize the disadvantages, the why it can't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is also one aspect why I said it's so important to show them, right?
Right.
Like it's working actually out there, right? And
Right.
people use it and they like it, instead of just talking about it, and then you can come up with so many disadvantages and whatever won't work and so on. And I really like the approach with this program we had. So just let's say, okay, let's take a smaller website, maybe not the easiest one, but one which is a good challenge, right? And then let's just try it out, and then you can see yourself. And maybe it isn't for you, right? I mean, that can always be, but like just try it out, and then you can judge it.
Yeah.
Not too much talking, more doing.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think people are rightfully skeptic, right? Because people are rightfully skeptical because everyone in tech, and that doesn't exclude us, is really prone to exaggerating the capabilities of their product, right? It's going to solve your every problem and it can do everything. And one of the the things that we are doing with edge delivery services, that we are explicitly shrinking the scope of what the product can do, right? In order to make sure that the things that it actually does do, it can do a much better job and a much more focused job, right? And that means absolutely, it means understanding and explaining the trade-offs, and in order to understand and explain the trade-offs, you need to know what the product is good for and what it isn't good for, right? That it can't do everything, and on the other hand, it means listening to the customer and understanding their constraints. So, Martin, I have a question for you, which is going into this direction, right? Um, when we look at the technology foundation, right, or the let's even say the product philosophy, right, with AEM as we know it, we have a super powerful, extensible at every level system that is complex but capable, right? And on the other hand, with edge delivery services, we have something that is relatively focused, that is extremely opinionated, that offers extensibility only in a couple of places, but that makes up for this by basically being opinionated in the right way, right? In a way that delivers results. So, how do you navigate this with customers who are asking about this trade-off, or who are confused about? Oh, well, wait, what? There are now two of them. How do you deal with this?
Okay, let me try to answer the question. And if I fail the question, let me know,
Yep.
because there's different ways to approach it. So let's start probably with the easy one, with the business author. I mean, we all have been trained on VisiVic over the past 10 years. We've learned what we can do, as you said, complex environment, everything, all great. Now we're introducing document-based authoring, and the natural reaction obviously is, will it work for me? Because people now work from a different use case and have a hard time to bridge the understanding, will it work for me? And I think here's a great example where we do that VIP approach, where we tell them you need to try it out to understand it. And what we have seen is just showing a slide won't do the trick. It's too much of a gap for people to make, and honestly, it was the same for me as well. I had a hard time believing it until I started doing VIP projects on my own, creating pages as kind of the content first approach. So I think that's where we tell customers, first of all, you need to learn it. And more importantly, we tell them it's not one or the other. So I try to avoid the conversation in a pitch, say, you need to decide in the next 5 minutes, otherwise it's gone. So we go into the project, we offer them variations, but, and that's more important, we offer them a guidance how to approach it. And I think if you throw in simplicity as kind of the guidance, that usually resonates very well. And customers are actually very open, business authors, to try out word authoring, because they don't know, if I don't like it, I can always go back, or I can mix and match. So they have the confidence to, and because of that, they are open to try out these new things here. For the engineers, I think, and Andreas said it already as well, you're skeptical, and I think it heavily depends how opinionated someone gets into the meeting, or how much a company is already on a certain implementation. If they're on Next.js, for example, and now deep down, then it's difficult to convince them. I'm not sure if you should then convince them. It's maybe just not the right moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I've learned is, if customers, I mean, so coming back from my commerce background, I have seen so many partners trying to implement the storefront, and they ended up with a cumbersome experience. And suddenly they were very open to look at some other ways. And if you tell them we are opinionated because it will help you to avoid certain pitfalls, that's usually also resonates very well.
Yeah.
I think it really depends a little bit on the background of who you talk to and what they have experienced.
Right. Okay. So I would like to use the opportunity not just to ask questions, but to ask you to come with your questions. Um, and in particular, I have in mind I would like to hear questions from Thomas or Ruben. Ruben, I think it's the first time I see you here on the call, so would be really happy to hear on the one hand your experiences, and on the other hand, if you have questions for Martin, who is super experienced in selling edge delivery services in Adobe Experience Manager, then that would be great as well. Same goes for you, Thomas, but you've been you've been speaking here, so you don't get this the extra special call out, just the special call out. Thank you. Might still be on mute. I didn't hear you. Okay, so um, Martin, you, you said there isn't a particular slide that is doing the trick in convincing customers, and with that I would like to lead it back over to Andreas. Um, how what supporting collateral are you using when talking to customers? Is this something where you've created a Netcentric slide deck for edge delivery services? Is this something where it's really just a conversation and a demo? How do you approach this from a mechanical collateral perspective?
Yeah, so we try to make it both with the emphasis on the demo. So as I said at the beginning already, you need to let them know some context, especially, I mean, this might have changed now with the GA and everything,
Yep.
right? Because just now everybody knows a little bit more at least, right? But
Right.
it's still in a state where it is kind of important to get everybody on the same page what we
Right.
are talking now about, right? So we have used a few slides. Most of them are actually coming from you, I guess.
Okay.
So the typical, like with the four or sites, like the
Right.
one you mentioned, right? But also the one with the VIP program, like what's that? Like how can I use it? How can I leverage of that? And also a little bit of architecture. Um, but as I said, giving this whole context, we try to keep it short, because if you're going too much into that rabbit hole, nobody like will understand like what does that mean now, right?
Right.
Like the hands-on demo is the more important, and this is always where whatever the questions come. We are always saying we have content for maybe half an hour, 40 minutes, including the demo,
Mm-hmm.
but please reserve 90 minutes because like you will have questions. And for sure, I can keep talking all the time, but like that never happened, right? Like
Right.
always there were the questions then and answering them. And that's very important because I think I said I did 20 or 30 of those meetings, and some questions are the same, right? But like then always you feel okay, they are coming from this direction now, or the current platform is dead. Do they have a pain actually with the current platform, or are they just curious about
Right.
like what's out there new, right? Um, and at least at the last year, you also felt relatively fast, okay, is this edge delivery service in this early stages something for this client or not, right? Because you just, let's be honest, you have to be adventurous to try out something completely new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not because it's not good or not working, but just because not 100 or 1,000 people have already done it, and you
Right.
can Google for the next best solution, and you have 10 at hand, right? You
Yeah.
always have to pave the way yourself, right?
Right.
If you're one of the first,
Right.
that can be good and exactly what somebody wants, right? But it can also be and something where they say, yeah, sounds good, and we understand that it could add value, but it's not for
Right.
us, at least yet,
Yeah.
right?
And
Um,
yeah. and in my experience, and as a German, I think I'm permitted to say this, that German companies, German customers are generally very eager to learn about new technology, right? Because we we have a long tradition of engineering and appreciation for this, but we also have a long tradition of mitigating and reducing risk, right? So so we happily hear the pitch, but when you ask us to, hey, let's commit to a VIP project, this is much harder, right? And um, Martin, I think I know the car manufacturer you mentioned, and I think we've been talking to them already a year ago, right? And at that time they weren't ready. So let's
Yeah, maybe you have a good example
yeah,
here, just what you guys both have said. If you look at commerce, there's not, hey, we bring one page live. They don't care about their page. They care about their business critical
right,
storefront. So it's all or nothing. And so we talked to Heinz brand. They're a US brand. We talked to a German Austria brand. At the same time, we pitched edge delivery. And I mean, for commerce, it's very compelling, the
yeah,
whole the value pitch. So the German company was like, yeah, can you show us data that really shows the value? Versus the Heinz brands, like, yes, we give you a smaller brand. So we started with Maidenform. They don't really care about Maidenform. It's just a brand they have. So we went live with them, and now we're tracking all the data. And the great thing is we get data that will show, hey, there's conversion. And on one hand, for Heinz brand, it was just not about the conversion, it was also to simplify the whole architecture, create a reference for all the other brands. But if we have that data, then Lars, coming back to the question, if I show customer you make more money with the edge delivery service, then I just show one slide and lean back and wait that the contract gets
right,
signed. Then it will be a no-brainer. So I think that's the part where we have over 100 customers or sites live, but we need to show the data that results in real money, and then it will
yeah,
become a different discussion.
yeah. Um, one more question. You both mentioned the VIP program a couple of times, and this is really something that is a super uncommon approach in enterprise software, right? I think everyone knows beta programs where you get the software, you get asked to do a bit of tire kicking, you sometimes get asked for feedback, and then the software ships almost unchanged. Um, Andreas, how do you explain this to your customers on the one hand, and on the other hand, and I think this would also be interesting to Jake and Thomas and Ruben. How do you navigate this concern that I sometimes hear from partners? Right? Are these VIP projects? Isn't just Adobe competing with our own consulting services?
Yeah, they probably are to a certain extent, right? But I think still there are a lot of websites out there, right? There's enough work for everybody, right? But coming back to how do you explain this VIP program? So it's definitely a shift in mindset. So because you typically, if you go to someone like Adobe, like a product vendor, typically you want to buy something like ready to use, right? And now, how do you explain to somebody you're actually kind of buying a product, right? But you're still part of like pushing this thing forward because it's still in early stages, right? You're very close, and um, I mean, some of the, especially enterprise customers, I mean, we are not talking anyway about like Word or Photoshop here, right? We are
Right.
talking about B2B software, which is a little bit of a different product relationship anyway. So some people are already used to that, and we can just tell them, yeah, it's like you are used to, but it's just better because you have a way more direct contact to the guys actually doing the stuff, right? So for them, it's relatively easy to understand at least what that mean or what that might involve. Um, To others, I would not focus with the VIP program or this whole approach so much about the closeness to engineering and so on, because they will learn all that on the way. I would more focus on this aspect you also mentioned already, like let's just try to keep it out, try it out fast, right? Like let's take some brand you might not care about, like Martin said, so much, right? It's still important and it's still cool if it performs well. But let's just try it out, and that's your chance with this VIP program, right? And then we see what's don't decide now about your platform strategy, because as
Right.
you're not knowing this new stuff, you can't make a well-educated decision. And
Right.
this is more the aspect of the VIP program I'm trying to focus on in those cases.
Okay.
So try it out, try to be fast. So what I very much liked about the VIP program was this needed commitment to go live, right? To not mess around half a year with just like proof of concepts, but really build something and ship it, right? Get it out of the door and really see it in the real world. Because if you don't see it in the real world, there will always be those skeptics and saying, yeah, sure, that works now in your laboratory, but like not out there, right?
Right. Okay.
Maybe I should add here, VIP projects have changed. I mean, we used VIP project last year to get usage and to close feature gaps. Now with the launch a few weeks ago, also the VIP projects have changed. If you just build a regular web page, as you said, Andreas, you know it, you don't need us. I think VIP projects, as we see it today, is on one hand to help building features that are not complete yet, to discover areas. But I personally see the value more. It's a reassurance for partners and customers that they become successful with something. We help with patterns. And what I hear from customers is really, hey, we are a team versus it's the vendor throwing features over the fence, and the SI has to implement it. So I think it's more where we go that direction. I don't think we're in a position anymore where we take away regular work from partners. Really.
But I think still like the VIP program changed, but still I feel like some very positive things have carried over now to the normal project, where like we are talking now here in this round, right? Like to my knowledge, never happened with the whatever AM platform you, you want to call it, if not classic, right? And we have the Discord, like we have just this discussions, and this can all discussions and having this feedback loop, short cycles can always only be positive, right? And this is the thing carrying over from this last year VIP program I really like, and which to my thinking will change how we work with this product in the future too.
Yeah. And from an engineering perspective, right? Having this direct connection with our customers and with our users, on the one hand through the Tuesday and Friday, Tuesday and Thursday calls that we have through the Discord, but also through the Slack channels that we create for every customer. This is extremely powerful and it's extremely rewarding, right? To see how the product is being used. It also puts a very hard gut check on things that are not being used, right? Because everyone has and I started my career at Adobe as a product manager, right? And as Martin can attest, every product manager has their favorite features, right? The features that they came up with, and what's making it even more difficult for me is that I am now have the ability to just implement them without asking anybody, and then knowing that some of these features land and some of these features just turn out to be dots. This is an important learning aspect, right? And you do this by observing how your customers and how your users are interacting with the product, and then you sometimes have to take the necessary step to take a feature out, to roll it back, and to say, well, nobody is really using this. Um, what you thought, Lars, was a great idea turned out to be a great idea for nobody but you, Lars. So let's take the consequences.
Maybe one question from my side, since I was a long time in sales. Um, do you have some cool anecdotes from, let's call it disastrous pitches, where you just think, oh no, why did we start pitching this? Are there any? I mean, you did like over 100 pitches. Were there any funny or wild stories?
Oh, I need to think about the funny ones. I just know that we talked to someone about our head, opinionated head, and they were already like 2 weeks away from going live with Next.js application, and they never told us. And at one point, they were like, "You're wasting our time." I mean, that's just lessons learned where I have to ask you more specific questions. But if someone else has a funny anecdote here,
Maybe also Jake. I think you also pitched a lot, I guess. So, or to ask questions.
Yeah, no, all that pitches always go perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the baddest experience in pitches is always like if they're not coming questions, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, we had that very rarely, I have to say, in this case, because like everybody was just curious, like what are they doing now, right? Like why are they opening Word now and or Google Docs, right? So the questions come naturally, but like you kind of feel it already if like there's just they are not interested, and like if it's just like a like one-sided show instead of a conversation. I mean,
Right.
that's the worst, I would say, which
Yeah.
can happen. And then I mean, sure, like there's always the guy coming in right in the in the back end, pulling out the children, kind of situations. But that's has nothing to do with
Right.
the edge delivery.
I can throw in some funny, well, it's not an anecdote for funny things. We're looking obviously for customer we can show and tell. And one of the first companies I talked to was a wheat company. So we had to figure out, can we show wheat products on stage? Our first commerce custom maven form is lingerie. So the Europeans are pretty okay with it, but there are certain other regions in the world where you cannot show these products. And now I'm talking to a furniture company. I can say the name, it's Lovsack. So even there are people having problems with the name Lovsack and furniture, but so I guess it's kind of interesting to see how people and cultures feel about
Right.
certain things. So
Thanks.
has nothing to do with ESL, but it's still funny.
Right.
Any other questions from the round about pitches or other things you want to ask?
Not really questions. I can more or less everything confirm that you have explained. So our experience is that convince the customer side or the actual authors is rather easy, though, in air quotes, right? So they see the tool and they, wow, that's amazing. So now at the moment I have tool A and B and C and D to all the jobs, and now I can do everything more or less at once. I can use my native tool, so they are convinced very easily. So that's what we can confirm from our pitches. So what is definitely harder is the IT department, because sometimes it feels it's a little bit too simple for them. So it seems they might feel to lose their challenges or whatever, all the difficult details, and have you thought about that? And then you are confronted with tons of edge cases and so on. So addressing what you said, Martin, addressing the actual value and create a story around about that is what should work. But for a lot of customers, it's quite early. I still think it takes time to adapt the idea of
Right.
document-based editing, get rid of WYSIWYG, etc.
So
maybe about
Yeah.
so like something to add about this simplicity, because we have had it always also before. I think you, Lars, mentioned it. It's not customizable, right? I mean, that's right to a certain extent, because you really can't like do anything about the server-side rendering stuff or do your typical server-side Java templates and stuff, right? But what and it's part of the learning process. What comes out now, seeing more projects, you actually can do a lot of customization around. But just like the type of customizations you are doing there, you have to think differently. Yeah, right. You have to think like, how can I really like plug this real product, which is not customizable, into my world, right? Like, where are the extension points to it? What platforms do I need to know, like SharePoint, right? Out of a sudden, we we do extensions to SharePoint and so on, or don't know, like do a lot more on the edge with the bring your own CDN, right? So learning about all those extension points and how to solve now the customer needs, and when maybe not to solve them, right?
Right.
Because with AEM, especially in the enterprise world, you always had the reaction to, okay, they are asking for it, we are building it, right? Because
Right.
we can, right? And this is what I like very much about this new approach and this new paradigm, this YAPNI, right? You ain't gonna need it. Like, keep it simple. Let's try it out with this very, very simple approach. Let's go live with it. Let's monitor it for a few months or so, and then decide if we really need this super complex authoring flow
Right.
or whatever, right? And this is really something we need to learn how to guide the customers, or and to not like offend them, right? Because they're
Right.
just used to, okay, we ask for this button needs to be green and on the button left, right? And we're just doing it because at the end, and
Yeah.
they know best what they need, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
guiding them in this new environment, this will be one of the biggest learning challenges.
Yeah.
Still.
So
I really of a mindset at the end also, which is needed from the customers. So the differences between the AEM we know from the past and edge delivery is also, you don't have this big releases anymore. You don't, so you can just deploy features. The editors work in a completely different way. So if you are still fixed to this view how AEM works and how, because you're doing it since ages, then it's hard. So you need to be open to rethink the whole topic and say, okay, why not doing it differently?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple minutes ago we mentioned that for IT there isn't much meat on the bone, right? And that they sometimes think, oh well, there's nothing for us to do, but the reality is that that it's absolutely critical to have them on board, and in particular to have them on board when it comes to CDN implementation, right? Because and if IT is in the basement of the organization, then the people who are administering the CDN are typically in a sub basement. So we need to pull them out and get them on board, because if we don't do that, the go lives can be much more complicated, right? Because in the end, we are not asking you to do a lot, right? We ask you to set the origin to hlx.live, and we're asking you to set up caching. And we had this with one customer. Well, we discovered it last week with one customer who set up the origin but didn't set up a caching. And now this one customer is accounting for 45% of the origin traffic that we are getting on hlx.live. And that customer doesn't represent anywhere close to 45% of the overall visitor traffic, right? And now we are trying to fix this. But on the other hand, the customer is saying, well, it's getting so close. It's getting so close to the holidays. We can't change it anymore. So apparently it was the holidays were far away when the decision to go live was made. But they've approached very quickly the very minute the traffic got live, and now we have to work through it, right? And if you've already made that connection during the sales process, during the pitch, then it's much easier to get this buy-in to operating the product successfully.
operating is actually a good keyword, right? Because like the challenges in the direction of IT will maybe not be so much running the thing itself, but the whole provisioning of new website, right? Like going live with one website with this Git repository and SharePoint, it's quite easy, but like let's go live with 100, right? You need some automation around that. And I'm sure Adobe will also offer some solutions for that sooner or later, and because everybody will face it kind of.
Yeah.
But those are the challenges. If I would say like bone on the flesh, like around this for the flesh on the bone for the IT department. Yes, in a sense, but also no, because you have other challenges in other directions.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this pattern is definitely something that we're seeing, right? Customers start with one side, then they do two, then 3, then 5. It's almost like a Fibonacci sequence of launches that you have there. We had one partner who launched 10 different country press sites in 1 week. So that was basically their first project was to do 10 launches at the same time. That was a bit unprecedented. But what we're seeing typically is really customers start with one side. So we typically describe it as the most important unimportant site that they have, right? The one side that isn't getting any resources any other way, but with Edge delivery, lowering the bar so much that you can now squeeze one in, and then you say, oh well, that was easy. Let's do it again. And that's absolutely something that we want to keep going and that we want to encourage. Okay.
Okay, close to the hour, huh?
Yeah, I think we have time for one question.
Can I have a word?
Yes, please.
So this question for Martin. Yes. Hi, I'm glad that you are here. And the question is, you mentioned 4 stakeholders, 4 group of people must be involved when they make a decision about the AM edge delivery service, or how do you call it nowadays? Which one is the hardest to convince? Because I think the authors, from my point of view, are the easiest one. And from this group now, the IT is somehow the trickiest. And also, how do you convince the company? They now invested years in Java developers and also using some frameworks. And now you're saying them, drop it away, everything, and start new. So the whole old investment is somehow gone, and convince them that they are, or said that they are we're going in a wrong direction. Actually,
I think here's the important part. What I'm saying to anyone or not saying is you need to throw away what you have built. If you're happy with what you have, so be it. We're not stopping anything. We're not taking anything away. But if you have a challenge to solve, if you have new things to do, that you have to build a new site, here's a new way. So I think that's the beauty of it. And as you said, with authors, we don't have a problem because we're not taking with Civic nothing away. We're just adding more options to them. And in my experience, and Lars, want to get your opinion too, I think usually a business owner, if they see the business value, they're kind of check, love it, but they also want to have the commitment from authors, from the business side and IT side. So having said that, I think it's more we need to convince IT. That's probably from all these groups the ones where we need a bit more time to spend with. But I think the message is clear. That's why I'm repeating it. Your investments are here. They're good. We offer certain things like Project Crosswalk that you can keep your aim authoring investments. So it's really about just bringing you here on a new journey.
Yeah, so in my perspective, developers can be finicky in that regard, right? And the reason here is that we are basically talking to 2 developer communities. One is what I would call the J2E OSGI community, right? And that's a community that we've been supporting and nurturing for a very long time. And now we are saying, you know what, the um, the the music has changed. It's now playing on the front end, right? And front end work is way more important than back end work. It's still important, but if we are talking about what makes the experience, then of course the code that is running in the browser is making a much bigger difference, right? And that's an adjustment that will take time. That doesn't mean that J2E or Java is going away in any way, shape, or form, right? People who are having a happy career based on Java, they will be able to retire doing nothing else but Java, right? But if you
That was funny.
but if you want to develop the new hotness, well, then the front end is where it's happening. The other part of this is and Next.js got mentioned a couple of times, is that if we are talking about what's hot in front-end development, then what's hot in front-end development at the moment is heavy frameworks, is headless development, is compiling, transpiling, bundling, and so on. And these are all things that we say, you know what, you don't need that either, right? So, and that's the point where we are going against the grain with two very, very strong communities, right? We're going against the grain of the heavy J2E backend community, and we're going against the grain of the heavy front-end community and saying, you know what, here's something that's lightweight, here's something that is giving results, and here's something that is very close to the customer needs. And I'm just watching how Dominik and Martin get walked out of the meeting room for overstaying their time. There's punctuality and lack of it is no joke in Switzerland. So we have these two communities where we need to basically reset best practices, right? And that's an interesting conversation to have, right? Not always an easy one, but it's an important one, because it's going back to the core of it, right? What's the reason why this website exists? And in almost all cases, the reason why a website exists is in order to serve visitors. These are the people that we need to develop for.
But it's not only the developers who are losing and who needs to change. Also, ops related things are changing because you don't have full control compared to an AM on-prem. So it's in multiple ways where the daily work is changing, not only for the developers.
Yes. However, in my observation, the attitude that I'm seeing from developers versus operations people to the tools of the trade is quite different, right? Developers get emotionally very attached to it, and in a lot of cases, operations people are saying, "Well, I'm just dealing with a bunch of how do I put this nicely? A bunch of manure created by vendors, and I have to handle it somehow. So if it's getting easier, that's definitely welcome. So, but of course, you do have changing patterns, changing work, changing tools, and that needs to be accounted for.
Yeah, I think they started crying already with AM as a cloud service that they
Right.
didn't have full control.
Right.
So maybe it's not so loud now anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a really a bold move, especially on the Adapt 2 conference, for example. It's actually a Sling conference. Then suddenly it becomes AMS delivery services conference. Somehow I had a feeling, I don't know the other, I don't know Ina, you were there, and also the
But
other guys.
always an AM conference, so it's
Yeah.
not so uncommon that it's known as delivery one.
Yeah.
So just to make sure, it's really called Edge Delivery Services in AM as a cloud service. That's the full name. So it's part of
Okay.
the enterprise.
Yeah.
Perfect joke.
Okay, so
Thank you, guys.
I think I'm going to wrap it up. We are already a couple minutes over, but I think this is the first time we filled the complete hour. So I want to thank everyone who dialed in today, who asked questions, and in particular, I would like to ask to thank Martin and Andreas for joining us as special guests. I hope to see you. I hope to see you in future iterations of this. As you know, we do this every other Tuesday and every other Thursday. So next opportunity to see most of you is next Thursday.